Teachers who aren't teaching. Who are they? And how do we get them back? Is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public Television, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.
Do you know of any teachers who have left the classroom and then returned?
Yeah, I was trying to think of that question. I don't think I do.
Honestly, I've thought about this. I don't.
Teachers who have left the classroom and then have returned to the fold. I don't personally know any. It's sort of like a mythic creature from what I understand.
No, I don't know of any teachers who've gone back to the classroom.
I wish I knew a huge handful of teachers. As it stands right now, I know of one.
I could name at least 30 people I know, first and last name, easily, who are no longer teaching, who are certified teachers.
Most people I graduated with are no longer teaching, which is heartbreaking because they're all such great people.
Recruiting and retaining teachers has been incredibly challenging. Our candidate pools have shrunk dramatically.
Regional Educational Laboratory, or REL Midwest, is an initiative of the United States Department of Education. There's a total of 10 RELs, and they're geographically bound. REL Midwest serves 7 Midwestern states. REL Midwest has recently completed a study where we looked at who are certified teachers who got certified in Michigan, but who are not teaching in public schools. So what we found out from our study is that Michigan has about 61,000 teachers who were certified in Michigan, but who aren't teaching in public schools. And most of those teachers, like over 90% of the teachers, are of non-retirement age.
If you look at surveys, just recent surveys, 84% of teachers are saying that teaching is much more stressful than it was in years past. We're seeing teachers indicating that salary is an issue. We saw a lot of teacher strikes over the last 5 or so years that were really focused around teacher pay.
And that's probably not surprising because you'll find that teachers in Michigan need to have a salary increase of about 22-23% to align the salary with other professionals who have similar experience and have similar education.
I know educators that started as teachers and didn't get pay raises for 7 years. And, anecdotally, they say, I knew it wasn't going to be a lucrative profession, but I certainly expected to get annual increases so I could afford to support my family. And it is preventing people from staying in the profession.
There's also this expectation that teachers are somehow supposed to come in and you're supposed to give of yourself and not expect anything. And that's just not the right. These are professionals. These are professionals who are shaping our next generation.
I have seen certified teachers leave the classroom. It pains me when we see qualified people who were passionate, people who got into this field and have invested time, money, and energy to try to make a difference on behalf of students, decide that this isn't meeting what they signed up for.
I am really, really seeing the writing on the wall as young professionals coming into the field of teaching are struggling making ends meet. And, they're having student loan situations, and then you've got this base pay, and then the very next year, the base pay is the same, and then the next year, the base pay is the same. I think that is really problematic, and I think it's a big turnoff.
And I get that it's a challenge for raising salaries, but if you don't do that, the cost is significantly higher.
The thing that's so bizarre is nobody goes into teaching for money. We're not expecting, to make a doctor's salary. We just want to be able to live. I just want to be able to pay my bills.
Several things inspired me to be a teacher. And the first one is the love of kids, being able to be a role model for kids.
Growing up, I loved babysitting. As soon as I could babysit, I did. I loved working with kids. I loved playing with them and engaging them.
I always wanted to be a teacher. I was the little kid who, played school and in free time in the classroom.
I think teaching is a calling. You don't do it for the fame, you don't do it for the money, you do it because you are called to do it.
I accidentally fell into teaching. It's the best accident that ever happened. I don't think I could find a profession that I would love more than teaching. I feel very fortunate and blessed in the idea that I get to go to work. Like, I love Mondays. When it comes right down to making ends meet and the bills getting paid and me living the best life I can, I don't feel like I've been hindered with the pay of teaching. And I think most teachers might disagree with me on that. I was very lucky. I graduated from Michigan State University in 1988 with 0 student loans. That puts me so far ahead of the pack because most people leave the college and higher ed situation with loans that are around for several years, more than several years. And when you look at the private sector and the pay scale, I think it's easy to leave the profession of teaching the way it is right now. I do know one teacher that left the profession and came back, but I think leaving the teaching profession for him was easy to do because there is so much stacked against you as a teacher.
I taught for 5 years. I left teaching and then I came back into teaching. I got my first job here at Bath Middle School in 2014, straight out of Michigan State. And although there are many wonderful aspects to teaching, I thought that I wanted to try something different, something that wasn't as stressful as teaching is. It got a little bit overwhelming for me, and I wanted to be able to get into a different career path that's still meaningful, but maybe paid more. I learned very quickly that did not suit my personality type very well, and the desk job, the 9-to-5 life, was not really for me. And so I made the decision to get back into teaching after about 4 months of being out of it. I actually took a pay cut to come back into education from what I was doing outside of it. There wasn't any direct incentive other than, I wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. It's a very kind of emotional tear back and forth. My heart wants to be in teaching, but sometimes my head wants to be outside of teaching.
So I think trying to keep teachers in the classroom is a little bit of a challenge in and of itself because it's very specific to their individual situations. Sometimes it has to do with the fact that they've burned out. Sometimes there are life factors that are happening, whether it be children of their own or having to care for other family members that are impacting that decision.
I have been a kindergarten teacher for 10 years. I left because I was pregnant with my wife and I's second child. We did the math on it, and it made sense for me to quit for the cost of daycare, especially for infants. It's so expensive. So it really didn't make sense for me to be working. I didn't want to put my career on hold. I was very passionate about the school I was at. I had just gotten my master's degree while I was pregnant with my daughter, so I definitely didn't want to stop. I was glad to be with my children because I love them, obviously, but to be forced into that position because mine was less lucrative was frustrating. My ex-wife now and I amicably split, and we share dual custody of our children. We have 50-50, and I knew that I needed to go back to my career. When I got back, however, they told me that they had to start me at about $10,000 lower. And not only was I was teaching from home. Setting up my classroom at my house for the pandemic, I asked friends to donate things, and that's the sad part, right? Is like we have to beg, borrow, and steal as teachers. Yeah, so this is the space that I had to go when the pandemic hit. This is where I taught. I taught from this chair in my basement, in the classroom that was this empty room. And I had to furnish it myself so it didn't look so sad to the kids. And I put up our posters and I put up boards from school. And then I had to get another monitor. So I was able to get one off of Facebook from an old high school friend. And for me, as a single woman, if I did not have my ex-wife paying for the amount she does of daycare, I wouldn't be able to be a teacher. There's no way. And that's not okay. I have my master's degree. I'm 36. I can't afford to put my kids in daycare by myself and pay my mortgage. And I live frugally. I went to food banks during the pandemic, and I'm not ashamed of it. I think that people should know that I went to food banks during the pandemic because we make that little.
The profession in of itself has changed dramatically. 40, 50 years ago, education was lifted up by society. Society doesn't necessarily view education in the same lens anymore, and that makes it challenging.
It's challenging when you are treated like a second-rate, human being. And in other countries, teachers are some of the most respected professionals in the country.
There are surveys that compare salaries in different countries. Definitely the United States is nowhere near the top.
We're disrespecting the true profession.
We really need this foundational piece where our teachers feel like they're valued and recognized for the work that they do. And if we don't have that, then we're just asking individuals to join the profession and join it with a lower salary, knowing that it's a stressful but an impactful job.
And the weird thing about that job is you always were made to feel that you weren't doing enough, even if you couldn't humanly fit in more time.
I taught public education for 30 years, all in special ed. And at the end of the 30 years, I felt that I just was very ready to move on to something else. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams, so in essence, I own my own business. And yeah, I love it. I feel that in real estate, I'm still able to do those things that I really loved about teaching. You're building relationships. You're advocating for the needs of families. But those things, those constraints about teaching that I didn't like, being chained to a classroom 24/7. You didn't have flexibility in your day at all. I missed so much of my own children's things that took place during the day.
Well, I taught for 17 and a half years, all in the same district. Took over the International Baccalaureate courses, previously working with principals that supported and appreciated what I could do. That philosophy, as you change administrations, changes. People that didn't necessarily maybe have all the best information or background were making pretty large decisions. I kind of just had a collapse. I just felt unsupported. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, and I left mid-year. I actually went on mental leave, and so I opted to kind of go on sabbatical. And then I had the opportunity to take skills from the classroom where I'm at now, which is an instructional designer at a financial institution. I think there was a little bit more self-worth that came with the private sector. I do think when you let go of some of that, something that's so emotionally draining, you do just find time for yourself or for others or your pursuits or just your own sort of happiness. But I'd be a liar if I said I didn't miss the classroom or miss that experience with my students. But it seemed like the right thing to do. I felt like the box that I was getting put in was getting smaller and smaller. As a result, the box that then I had to put my students in got smaller and smaller. I feel like it is imperative that administration have belief in the fact that teachers are the expert in what they're doing. So trust in that and let me do the thing that I'm there to do. Or if that seems too scary, ask for my input. Make decisions with me, not for me. That would be, I think, a monumental change.
No teacher leaves the classroom thinking, bye students. We all want to be there.
Teacher turnover is a problem for students. There's evidence to support that the longer a teacher stays, the more chances they have to improve their craft and the better that result is for students.
I've watched some classrooms have turnover of 2 or 3 teachers in a year. So imagine the consistency for students when we know that structure is how children thrive.
When districts and schools don't have a certified teacher to fill a teaching vacancies, the students aren't getting the best teacher for that subject.
And it's particularly concerning for our students that live in underserved school communities, where they have been disproportionately impacted by teacher shortages for the last decade.
You see kids who maybe they've grown up in tough situations, and the educators have made a difference in their lives.
So the more we support teachers, whether it be by salaries or other sort of incentives or supports, those students that are disproportionately disadvantaged in our underserved communities, those students will be more likely to have a prepared and qualified teacher.
In our study, we have also explored incentives that would motivate teachers to go back to teaching. And we found that teachers most frequently listed an increase in salary as one of their most desirable incentives. And we also see that the support of school leaders is fundamental in many ways, right? For having teachers stay teaching at that school and recruiting additional teachers.
If you want the best and brightest to join your team, you have to convince them with salary and with a job that's impactful. I think we can say that teaching is an impactful profession, but when we talk about salaries, there's a missing piece there.
We have to look at how to make it possible to pay teachers more, not just so that we can retain who we have, but I believe that will help in attracting new people to the field.
I think teachers need a larger salary to compensate them for the extra time that it takes outside of the normal working hours. And then I think it's resources within the school to be able to help them carry out the duties of their job.
In other professions, you can choose to turn it off. You don't have to be available. But when you're a teacher, there's an expectation that you're available 24/7. And that just is not sustainable.
I've seen staff members who have said, you know what, I just want something different. It isn't what it once was. And that's hard. It's challenging because there's so much excitement that you get from seeing students achieve their dreams. And when you lose that, when you burn out, it's just hard.
Like with any job, I think that who you work for makes a huge difference in whether you stay or you go.
So the onboarding process is important. Assigning the right types of mentors, providing support, and helping people through those first couple of years, which are so challenging. What happens when teachers are exceptional? 10, 15 years in, they're honed into their craft. They are surgical in how they can build relationships and how they can make sure that students are successful. Those are the times we have to keep lifting them up.
So I think that school leaders can play a huge role in this when they're empowered to do so. There are times when school leaders' hands are tied as well in terms of what they can do.
It's very difficult for the Department of Education to implement policies that affect salary. The pay scale is something that is locally negotiated within our school districts.
Great communities don't just happen by accident. They're designed, they're built, they're worked at. And our legislators have got to see schools as an important component of great communities.
And so I think legislation is so crucial in retaining the teachers that we have, recruiting teachers that never thought that they'd want to go into this beautiful profession called education. And legislation can certainly fix things right now and prioritize directions in school so that a child is very well prepared for the real world and not just test scores and rote learning.
Certainly our legislatures could impact teacher salary. There are states that have statewide salary schedules that all local school districts have to adhere to, and local school districts can greatly impact their salaries in negotiations. Recently, Detroit Public Schools raised their entry salary significantly, and they've seen an influx of new educators into their school district as a result.
My advice for state legislators to be able to get teachers retained is definitely a robust funding for all the needs that teachers face.
Create a system in which education can thrive, which then allows administration to be supported. Administration then needs to pass that support down to their teachers so the teachers can pass it on to their students.
Working conditions and the supportive school leadership also plays a really instrumental role in keeping them in the profession.
So from a district leader standpoint, one of the most important things that we can do is try to create the right culture.
It is imperative that administration have the experience of what they are expecting their staff to do, endure.
I understand that administrators have a very tough job. At the same time, administrators can make or break a teacher's experience teaching. And if a teacher does not enjoy their relationship with their administrator, they are going to either leave the profession or they'll leave the district. I've been very fortunate. I'm very close with my principal, and she does a fantastic job.
When I think about the incentives, there's making sure that we have the right pathways for teachers to be able to re-enter or even jump in if they're from outside of education completely.
I think removing some of the barriers to bringing teachers into the field. Recently, the certification laws in the state of Michigan did get changed a bit and allow for, alternative certification programs to exist that can really help bring committed, competent people into the teaching field. And I think things like that are really helpful.
MDE has a series of recruitment and retention activities for educators and school administrators. We also just launched the Welcome Back Proud Michigan Educator campaign, where we're trying to make recertification easier for teachers that would like to return to classrooms. We're waiving professional learning hours that they need to recertify to get them immediately back in the classroom at full salary. To entice career changers into the field of education, we need to look at what we're doing and engage in innovative practices.
With respect to the educators here in the Wilson Talent Center, what we do is an annual authorization through the Department of Education that allows them to take courses concurrently while they actually start their career.
It can be hard to entice career changers because it's often a pay cut, but I do think there are other benefits, and that's sharing the love of what they do with children.
When you ask a group of adults, any group of adults, to say, take a moment and remember your favorite teacher, every single person can remember someone. Their impact on us as adults, right, is so great that it doesn't match the investment we're making into them.
I can say that for those individuals that have left teaching, maybe the standard of life has shifted and, our salaries in some senses have increased, but all of us still miss working with our students. The reason why teachers stay in the classroom is because they love their students.
There's this magic that happens that you can't explain to anybody. For me, it's the point when a student realizes that they're doing something independently.
You are preparing a human being for life, and that is something that I will never take for granted.
Having an educator that you trust and is knowledgeable and is good at their craft is gold.
We need adequate pay. And I'm not saying high pay, I'm saying adequate, so that it is just meeting us where we need to be.
I'd like to live in a world where teachers are among the highest regarded with things we value highly, like medicine.
My hope that in 5 years, there's not a teacher left who says, I have to leave teaching because I cannot afford to teach. I want that to be a thing of the past.
Teachers who aren't teaching. Who are they? And how do we get them back? Is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public Television, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.